Information on the KOTOR remake has been extremely scarce, and because of that I haven't been able to make much content surrounding it, and when I do, it's usually information from my sources that worked on the game. Now, if I was a viewer, I wouldn't believe everything I'm saying either. I would be taking it with a grain of salt, which is what I expect you guys to do at all times, and it's down to me to ultimately prove what I'm saying is true when we get more information about the game. But for the first time in a while, I do have something to share with you guys that is official and is technically a news update. Now, it's a little bit weird to me that this hasn't been reported on anywhere, and I mean literally there isn't a single outlet that has mentioned this, and it has me a little bit worried. Now, I'm not thinking, oh no, the KOTOR remake is basically finished, it's done, it's terrible, it's gonna be doom and gloom, but it does have me scratching my head a little bit. There's also something else I want to mention at the end of this video, which I think some of you might get excited at the prospect of, but it will probably upset you. So you're going to want to hear that, so stick this one out. Anyway, let's get into it. So, about a month ago or so, somebody sent me a video, I think it was on Twitter, and it was an interview in Portuguese with the head of Saber Porto. Now, the company that took over development of the Knights of the Old Republic remake are indeed Saber Interactive, and I was told that there was some information about the remake in this video. But obviously, I don't speak Portuguese, so I reached out to a lovely viewer of mine, she's a Portuguese national, and I asked her if she could have a quick run through the video and just point some things out that may be of interest regarding the remake. Now, she knows who she is, and she's very likely watching this video, so I just want to shout you out. Thank you for your help. And she did a quick translation for me, and she said, the interview was at a Comic-Con in Portugal, and they began discussing games development in Portugal itself. The guy then goes on to talk about how Saber in Porto, which is a subsect of Saber Interactive, is officially now involved with the development of the KOTOR remake, and it made the entire studio go wild when they found out. Now, apparently he also goes on to say that Sony brought the Knights of the Old Republic remake to Saber Porto, but that could be a mistranslation, which is a little bit confusing. I'll talk about that later. But it is official, we know now that the game is being worked on by Saber Porto. While knowing who is officially working on the game might excite some, to me, this is very concerning. Now, I don't want to try and say that Saber Porto aren't capable of making something good. I am sure everybody working there are extremely talented, great professionals, and they want to make a good game, and they've earned their places as part of the industry. But let's look at the studio's history. So before they were acquired by Saber, they were originally known as a company called Big Moon Entertainment, and they developed iconic games such as Syndrome and Dakar 18. Now, if you've heard of either of these games, I would be surprised, and if you have, let me know in the comments. It'd be funny to see how many of you have played them. And I don't know the general quality of them, but I know some people will tell me, well, Luke, Aspyr didn't particularly make games either, they only worked on ports, so why are you criticising Saber Porto? And while you are definitely correct in saying that, Aspyr over the past 3 or 4 years literally built the studio around the Knights of the Old Republic remake. This is why I never really could understand the argument that Aspyr haven't made any good games, so how could they make a good KOTOR remake? Well, the thing is, everybody at Aspyr were literally at the top of the gaming industry. They were some of the most experienced and talented artists in the industry who literally came from all over and left their jobs at other big studios to join Aspyr to work on Knights of the Old Republic. And all of these talented creators were let down by the leadership of Aspyr, not the talent on hand in the creative departments. And really, the whole purpose of taking the Knights of the Old Republic remake away from Aspyr's full control was to give a more experienced developer in the leadership roles the opportunity to steady the ship and get things back on track. But to me, it just seems so backwards to take it away from all of those experienced devs. Yes, they had a bad few months, but they were experienced, and they could have banded together to use that to get it back on track to where it needed to be at Aspyr. But instead they've given it to Saber, who have given it to their subsects. That doesn't make any sense to me at all. Now, as for my sources at Aspyr, they weren't fully aware of who took over development of the game either. Saber Interactive as a studio are a big studio with lots of different moving pieces, but they knew it was going to Saber Interactive somewhere because they witnessed Saber take all of the code and all of the assets and stuff like that, and even the writers helped out with Saber a little bit, but they weren't sure specifically who was working on it. And I showed them this interview, and the response that I got from them was literally shock. They were almost in disbelief who had taken over this game that they had poured so much love into, and I quote, "It left them speechless." And their feelings haven't changed. They know they made a good game, a game they were proud of, a game that was being built by industry veterans who had worked on the original Knights of the Old Republic, who knew what it took to make something special, but they were just let down by the leadership not having a clear enough picture alongside its partners. They also clarified to me that it was Sony who said to Saber, "Sort it out." So from my knowledge, it's actually Saber who took it away from Aspyr and not Disney or Lucasfilm or Sony. And when this man from Saber Porto says that Sony came to them with the game, I think it's more that Saber decided that they were going to be a part of supporting its development, rather than them actually being given full reign. And there are some of you that might know that Saber do have a lot of studios under their belt, and this is very true. They are probably outsourcing it to loads of different developers within Saber Interactive. But the issue is, the most experienced and the strongest developers within Saber, I would say, have all got enough on their plate. They do have some pretty experienced devs like New World Entertainment and 4A, for example, who made the Metro games. I think they could probably pull off a good KOTOR remake. But if you want to look through the information about these more experienced studios within Saber, they are all busy with their own projects. So really the only answer here is, alongside Saber Porto, they are outsourcing it to the national divisions within Saber, so Saber Porto, Saber Russia, Saber Sweden, and because of that, the core development studio of Saber probably aren't focusing on it right now either, because they have Space Marine 2 to sort out, which looks like it's going to be a pretty big game for them in its own right. Now, there is a silver lining here, because as far as I am aware, Saber did actually take most of Aspyr's work, which was a lot. They were working really hard on the game, and they had a lot of stuff done. They haven't just started from scratch, they haven't just started from the beginning, because really there was no reason for them to do it, because most aspects of the KOTOR remake under Aspyr were good. It sadly was Sony that didn't like the visual presentation of the game. And the words that my sources used were pretty much as follows. They wanted it to come across as a God of War, Santa Monica, Naughty Dog level production of visual cinematic splendor. And Aspyr had built the Knights of the Old Republic remake as an RPG, not an action-adventure game that was about cinematic presentation. And that's where the breakdown of relationship happened. And it's probably likely that Saber are just going to be redoing that aspect of the game, and who knows how it will affect things in the grand scheme. Maybe it will make it better, maybe it will make it worse, I don't know, but that was the core problem. They had no issues with the fact that they were delving a lot more into the stories, into the characters, into the relationships you could have with those characters. They were delving more into the visuals generally. They were adding a lot more diversity to the story choices and whatnot. They changed the gameplay, they changed it to a more Final Fantasy VII Remake-esque experience. And ultimately, it all went tits up literally because Sony wanted God of War KOTOR Edition. But with that said though, I am concerned. Knights of the Old Republic is one of the most iconic games of all time, and it's one of the most influential RPGs of the early 2000s. And this is a remake that needs the utmost care, the utmost dedication and respect. And to just kind of outsource it and throw it around to a bunch of middling studios within a grander studio that don't have a lot of experience making games of real high quality, and doesn't necessarily have experienced industry veterans, it worries me. There is no doubt Aspyr screwed up. They made mistakes. Their leadership panicked. They fired people who shouldn't have been fired, and they let people down. But inherently, that studio was dedicated to the Knights of the Old Republic remake. So much so, and this is where some of you might get a little bit down, My sources told me they already had the codename and they already had plans ready for the KOTOR 2 remake and then potentially a KOTOR 3. This whole situation with Sony being disappointed in the way the game looked visually might have just robbed us another opportunity of getting a KOTOR trilogy, because that is what Aspyr supposedly wanted to be. They wanted to put themselves on the map with the KOTOR remake, to turn themselves into a household name, the same way BioWare did 20 years ago, and then they wanted to move on. They wanted to tackle the KOTOR 2 remake, which supposedly was the one they were really excited about, and then they wanted to make their own Knights of the Old Republic 3. That's what I was told. Now, as somebody who knows people inside of Aspyr, I know how much passion and how much love these people had, not even for Star Wars, but specifically Knights of the Old Republic. People who had left all of these major studios and rejected jobs from major studios just to come and work on this specific game because of how much it meant to them. I have spent literally hours talking with people from Aspyr about our favourite characters, our favourite storylines, the things we wished we saw in Knights of the Old Republic 3, the things we loved about Knights of the Old Republic 2, our favourite storytelling themes, our favourite music from the games. And they just expressed to me the sheer devastation of losing the opportunity to finish this game because they were so proud of what they were doing and they loved what they were making. And I, for one, really do believe that it is a bad decision by Saber. Now, I really wish that in a year or two's time, I'm going to be eating my words, and I want to. I hope that when this game comes out, it blows us all away. I was literally watching a Dead Space remake video a little bit earlier, and the game looks phenomenal, and it looks exactly like what a good remake should be. And if Knights of the Old Republic isn't up to par, I'm gonna be so sad, and I'm sure so many other people will. And I really do hope that Saber managed to pull off something magical, but with what I know now, I am just a little bit worried. Just a little bit. And if you did have insanely high expectations for the KOTOR remake, maybe, just maybe, bring it down a tad, because I myself have been the most enthusiastic person about this. I have spoken so positively on so many fronts. I have spoken so highly of some of the amazing people that were working on it, and even I am now a little bit more hesitant to get too excited. But anyway, hopefully with this video out of the way, we can finally start talking about some more positive topics going forward. And I want you guys to let me know in the comment section below, what do you think about all of this? Are you happy that Aspyr have lost it and you're happy that Saber Porto and Saber are taking control? Or do you think that maybe it should have been given to someone else entirely, or Aspyr should have been given the chance to fix their wrongs? I really appreciate it if you got this far. Don't forget to hit the like button and share this video if you enjoyed it. It helps me out a great deal. And if you haven't, perhaps consider subscribing to join the biggest growing Knights of the Old Republic community on YouTube. I'll see you guys in the next video. But until then, may the Force be with you. Always.